Hi everyone, today we're going to address the issue of a skipping or jumping chain. For me, I put these into two particular categories. The first category is when you're kind of putting loads of power down through the pedals, particularly when you're going uphill, or if you're in maybe a bit too hard a gear and you're going to have to really put the power on through the pedals. And that sensation sometimes causes your pedals to, it feels like jump forward a bit, like it's missing a tooth or two on the gears. Now, that is one particular category. The second category is often the easier one to fix, and that is when you feel like the chain, particularly at the back, is jumping up or down a gear and not quite happy in one gear, not quite settled. So that's not normally when you're putting power through, particular extra power. It's when you're just cycling normally and it just feels like it's not quite settled and quite rested. That's the second category. So we're going to deal with that one first. I'm going to run you through the common causes for that. There's not an exclusive list, of course, and then we'll deal with category one after that. So when it comes to the chain jumping maybe up or down one gear, one sprocket when we're riding along, that is nearly always caused by an issue with alignment. And that's typically something that's relatively easily fixed. So if you weren't aware, you've got the derailleur at the bottom here, and the derailleur moves up and down your gears depending on which number the setting is of the gear up by your handlebars. So when you move the shifter up or down, the chain moves accordingly. If things are slightly out of alignment, it's usually caused by a cable that has got a bit loose. And if you can see here, if I reduce tension to the cable, you can see the derailleur is moving over quite a lot here. Similarly then, if we go anti-clockwise, typically that would be loosening a nut, but what this is doing is stretching the cable's length. Then actually you're causing the derailleur to go up a gear. Usually when you're riding a bike, the cable stretches, certainly within the first 50 miles or so of a new cable, and then it tends to bed itself in. But over time, over hundreds and thousands perhaps of miles, your chain will stretch. It's perfectly normal. And what you would do is you would actually do the anti-clockwise adjustment to help it. So if your chain is jumping, if your chain is just skipping a little bit and not quite happy, it's almost certainly going to be going this way. It's almost certainly going to be going to a lower sprocket with a traditional derailleur because there's less tension required. So as the cable is stretching, it will just be moving itself more that way. Hopefully you can see this part moving as I do that. So that's fairly normal. So honestly, that's probably going to solve 90% of the issues for those of you who are tuning in. The other issue is the gear hanger here. This gear hanger needs to be absolutely perfectly parallel with the bike frame, the bike wheel, in order for the derailleur itself to be nice and straight. Here it's perfectly straight and in alignment, but particularly with mountain bikes that maybe suffer a knock, and for people who chuck their bikes in the back of the boot frequently, make sure you chuck the bike in with this side, with the opposite side down into the boot. If you chuck it down with this side facing down, this is actually a very soft piece of metal and it can bend out of alignment. More times than not, it's bending in this way. And if it goes in by 2 or 3 millimeters here, it's magnified hugely at the bottom of the derailleur arm here. So you've got an issue where essentially your derailleur arm is going to be pointing at a severe angle, and that will cause the chumping and skipping as well. The third issue is sometimes your B screw. The B screw here and adjust the derailleur movement backwards and forwards or in and out to enable the chain to move freely, particularly in the higher and lower gears. We'll look at that in another video. And you've also got the limit screws here. The limit screws prevent the chain from going too far this way and too far that way to stop the chain coming off the edge of the gear cassette at the extremities. If it's a new derailleur you've got and you're facing the issue with jumping and skipping, that may also be an issue. If it's an existing derailleur, I can't see that will be the issue. You're talking an issue of angles, and you're talking an issue of cable stretch, cable length, keeping things in alignment. So in summary, if you're skipping and jumping a little bit when you're pedaling normally, not under load, but just going along normally and regularly, I would say it's because the alignment isn't right between the derailleur, the chain, and the cassette. You can see here that things are pretty much bang on. I'm slightly out of alignment here with the camera. There we go. But again, twisting of the barrel adjuster will almost certainly fix 90% of problems for you. So that's category 2. Now let's go to category 1. With the skipping and jumping under load, usually it's one of 3 problems. Assuming you've sorted out the alignment, which we covered a moment ago, there can really be only 3 other explanations, and they are the chain, the cassette or freewheel, and the chain rings themselves. In order, they all wear, and they tend to wear chain, then cassette, and then chain ring in that order. The chain rings are usually the last to go in terms of wear. So the way we need to keep our regular maintenance ongoing with a bike is to replace our chain in good time, because if it wears too much, the chain then isn't fitting correctly within these teeth of the sprockets, and they will then wear away the insides of every tooth. Because the chain has stretched, I'll explain what that is in a moment, you'll be wearing away the insides of all these teeth, and then this will wear. As soon as that happens, really, when you start pedaling hard, the chain is not able to bite and get hold of these teeth to pull the cassette around, and that's where you get your slipping, that's where you get your jumping. In very extreme cases, if you do lots and lots of miles, particularly if you have a single chain ring up front, or you like to favour one particular chain ring over another and rarely change gear, then these teeth will start getting very spiky, and they will start to resemble, if you like, shark's teeth and even shark's fins, where the teeth almost bend away from them slightly a little bit, like you get with a shark's fin. Anyway, if these get super spiky, almost certainly the wear has happened already with the chain and the cassette. So that is the third and final cause of a chain jumping and skipping. With this category, I said it was more difficult because sometimes there is a bit of guesswork involved, but it absolutely requires cost. You can't get round the wear with these things, guys. You will need to replace either the chain ring or the cassette, or hopefully more likely the chain. Again, preventative maintenance. If you change this in good time, then you won't be wearing out the cassette. The new chain will just bed into how the cassette is, and you should be able to get many chains to one cassette, which is definitely the cheaper option. Now, the way to find out if a chain has stretched is relatively simple, but is made much easier with a chain stretch tool. These are relatively cheap online, and the general principle is if the spike of the measuring device manages to fit in between the links, then it means it's worn by whatever it says. Here we have 0.75%. The general rule of thumb is that if the spike can fit in, therefore being over 0.5%, then it's time to replace the chain. In fact, overdue time to change the chain. But I think we've caught it fairly early. I don't think the wear, particularly looking at the cassette from earlier, it looks like the teeth are still fairly squared off, which is a good sign. If they were quite spiky, then definitely the chain would have had its day. The cassette would have had its day as well. But I think we've caught it in good time. So for me, this is a case of preventative maintenance. And if the customer replaces their chain now, then there won't be the inevitable jumping and skipping in the future. Nevertheless, if yours is jumping already, if you've already got that issue, I'll probably guarantee that this is well past this point and almost certainly past the 1% mark as well. So this has got a long way to go before it gets that bad. So if you're jumping and skipping, I'm afraid to say it's probably too late already, because if you did replace with a brand new chain, there won't be a way for the new chain to marry up with the teeth of the cassette that I explained a moment ago. So prepare yourself that you'll need to get a new chain anyway, but probably follow up with a new cassette too. Hopefully you won't need a new chain ring, because that's where things get more expensive and more complicated. But here we can see the teeth are absolutely fine. They're not really very spiky, so I think there's minimal wear on here. I think the cassette is fine as well. So for him, he isn't experiencing jumping and skipping. Getting a new chain will prevent that from happening in the future. So I hope that's cleared it up. I hope that's a helpful description for you. Again, 2 categories. The first is when it's skipping and jumping under load, which is the one I've explained just now. Almost certainly it's a chain and then a cassette and then a chain ring. If it's already jumping, folks, and it's the original chain you haven't replaced yet, I'm afraid to say it's going to be a chain and a cassette, most likely. One doesn't tend to wear without the other. But once you've done that, you're in business. If you have put a new chain on and it's jumping immediately, it's time for a new cassette at least, but let's hope you haven't got to get a chain ring as well. And again, for the second category, which is the most common for 90% of people, the issue is down to alignment, which I showed earlier on, and that is normally remedied by adjusting the barrel screw here, and that will move the derailleur towards the wheel or away from the wheel and get that alignment bang on spec. I hope that's really helpful for you. If it is, please please subscribe to the channel. That will motivate me to upload more bike maintenance videos. For now though, I think we're there with that one. I'm going to shut up and give you a good day without my voice. Bless you. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.